Thank you very much for joining us on the Voice of Job Seekers video series. And we welcome you to listen in. And hopefully, this will help you in your job search for the summer and really anytime. My guest today has been with me before. He is the founder of Career Avenir.
Oh, Avenir Careers.
Avenir,
AvenirCareers.com.
Avenir.com. And that's A-V, I'm sorry, ENIRCAREERS.com.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, Nii Ato Bentsi-Enchill, how are you?
Yes, I'm doing very well. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate the invitation. I'm just glad to be here on a beautiful Monday morning here in New Jersey.
Yeah. Oh, you're in New Jersey. Why did I think that you were in Boston for some reason?
I used to. So I lived in Boston for about a year and a half back in 2007 to early 2009.
Okay.
So it's in my past. So maybe if you're scrolling through, my work history or something, or in our last conversation, maybe that's why you're thinking about that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, there was, and then you went to school in Boston too, right?
No, only lived there. I went to school in upstate New York, to
Oh,
Hamilton College, in case you're familiar. Yeah.
gotcha. Very good. So let's get down to it. You wrote an article a while ago on values, and I want to talk a little bit about it. And if people want to read about it, they can go to your site. Now I have the link. The title of the article is Why Your Values Should Lead Your Job Search. And I think it's very timely because we're talking about a lot of this that's going on right now, especially the uprising
Yep.
or the civil unrest, depending on how you want to call it.
Hmm.
Values are at stake mainly, and
Yes.
although
Hmm.
we don't have to, focus in on it. I think we should make it aware, for time's sake, that this is a time where your values are being tested,
Hmm.
and I think it's very important to talk about it. So, just to kind of get a little background, uh, what kind of motivates you at the time? And mind you, you wrote this last fall, I believe.
Yeah, it was in the fall, I believe, when I first published this article.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. So, what motivated you? Was there a particular client situation that you particularly had that informed you or inspired your thoughts?
No, it wasn't actually a particular client situation. Quite honestly, values are something that are pretty central to what I do in my practice as a career coach.
Mhm.
For me, I come from the standpoint that we are, you're a whole person. And so whenever I work with a client, I don't, focus solely in on them being a career professional, what they do. Their personal life, not that I'm trying to dive into personal life, but it impacts and informs their work life. And so you
Mhm.
have values across these two realms of your life, but these two realms are not separated. So your whole person, your work life, and your personal life are not two completely distinct things. And so for those reasons, I found values coming up over and over again when I work with my clients. And so I found that it's important to help clients identify what their values are in order for them to try and find them in their workplace. And ultimately that leads to, longevity and happiness, which I think we're going to get to, but that's sort of the basis of it. I want my clients to lead with their values because ultimately it's going to help them to find work that is more closely aligned and allow them to have long-term success because they're in an environment that supports and affirms and even, promulgates or perpetuates their own values.
Mhm. Are there particular clients that would actually benefit the most from focusing in on what's most valuable to them?
I think that everyone would benefit from focusing on their values.
Mhm.
While not everyone shares the exact same values, I do believe that having values is universal, that everyone has a set of values that they try to adhere to. In my article, I made sure to define what values are. So the definition I used at the time was a person's principles or standards of behavior, one's
Mhm.
judgment of what's important in life. And so, with that working definition, I believe that everyone has some level or set of values that they adhere to. And if they can use those to guide their job search, they're ultimately going to find work that's more in alignment with their values. And again, that leads to happiness and all these cascading or domino effects that come thereafter.
Right. Yeah, I think more important now that I think that people will start taking note of what they truly value out of a workplace and start to center their job search around not just what fits their skills and what fits their abilities, but also the type of culture, even though we've been there before. But now we have this thing happening now to where not just Black people are going to focus in on what's going to be valuable to them. There'll be white people who will also um, look at is your company truly diverse? Is your
Hmm.
company, and they'll want to look at places where and look for evidence that the company truly values diversity and inclusion as well.
Right, right. And just to go off of that, as you're alluding to earlier, in the current climate, especially United States, but more globally with the pandemic, this opportunity to pause, which has been forced upon us, but we can turn it positively into an opportunity, I
Mhm.
think is forcing a lot of us to question our values, reprioritize our values, and really, drill down to what is truly most important to us, because everything kind of being laid bare right now as far as how the economy works, how society works, and how it doesn't work, quite honestly.
Right.
And so, in that regard, by having to more closely examine, having the time and the space, if which is a privilege, I must acknowledge that some of us have, we can start to recalibrate what those things are, and we might find out, okay, well, maybe I was working 70-hour weeks prior to the pandemic. I'm realizing now how much value I find in spending time with my family. So
Mhm.
coming out of the pandemic, I might be looking for a job that's going to afford me more, family time, because that's the value I want to put forward in my next job search, or the value that my next company should have. And in the article you wrote, you mentioned how you worked in environments that were very supportive of family, to the point that if you had to leave to go take care of your child and something's going on with your kid, it was no issue whatsoever. That was the cultural value at that company that you shared that made for a good match.
Yeah, and I think you brought up something that's really key here. Um, the days of overtime might be on hold or perhaps even over to a certain degree because people are going to emphasize, or more people are going to emphasize working at home, although not
Hmm.
everybody's going to want to.
Hmm.
And they'll have the access to more work, although they may not want more work necessarily. They love the
This is
access
true.
to their family,
Hmm.
and being that that's going to be more flexible now, the idea of overtime might be coming to a pause for a while, or
It
maybe
could
over for
be.
good.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, the working world has changed dramatically. Companies who were, hesitant or reticent, to provide work from home options, that's been completely blown out of the water. If it was an artificial, hold on letting people work from home, that's gone. It is now clear that employees can work from home and be just as productive, if perhaps even more productive than they were coming to a workplace, because they're saving that hour commute or whatever it is. They're more refreshed, they're more energized, and they can work at their own pace or schedule. And so you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube as far as working from home. And so we are going to see a shift. Maybe remote jobs are going to start exploding. They're already, it's the only option right now, and that
Right.
trend might continue. That remote jobs will be the thing post pandemic, until there's a vaccine. No one's going to be going back into completely full, workspaces for a while.
Right, right. And that's interesting. I'd like to see what your take is on how, um, being that people would be more shared core value centered now,
Hmm.
since that awakening has kind of lifted and shifted. How do you expect to see it more in the job search, or do you see it more specific to a job search strategy?
Sure. I mean, I think that, so using the example that I just mentioned about, you're reprioritizing your family.
Mhm.
Um, the mindset that I have in terms of using values to lead your search is that it's going to inform what type of company you're going to work for.
Mhm.
In my practice, my clients, I really try to focus them in on what's your final destination, as in the company you're going to land in.
Mhm.
In a separate article, I talked about how people, spend more time planning their vacations often and doing research on that than they do the companies that ultimately land in. And so the challenge there, or the parallel here, is that with the vacation, where you go really matters. You want to have fun, you want to be safe, you want to have activities that you care about, things to see that you care about, and you want an enriching experience on your vacation. And
Mhm.
so if you transpose that into the working world, you want an environment that's going to take care of you. It's going to be safe for you. We want to think emotionally, mentally, physically. You want an environment that is going to support, your strengths. It's going to support your future success and ability to thrive. You don't want a job that's going to beat you down every single day that you go there.
Right.
And so if people are able to, embrace their values and have that lead, that's going to get them the outcomes they're looking for. So I went through a few steps, and let me know if I'm getting a little bit ahead. But as
Okay.
far as actually putting that to practice, in terms of executing a job search, you want to, number one, I suggest doing a values inventory of your previous workplaces.
Mhm.
So that means looking at, what was the work culture like in the 2, 3, or 4 places I worked prior to my current job search? What did I like in those places? What did I dislike in those work environments and in those work cultures? What worked for me that allowed me to stay in some jobs longer? What didn't work for me that maybe made me leave prior jobs prematurely? And so
Right.
having an idea of where you've come from will allow you to better direct where you're going.
If I could
After,
interject real
sure.
quick, and I'm sorry, you were on the flow, and I want to interject. Uh, and I think people have to realize that this is going to be a little bit more in depth than what most people are used to doing. They're used to,
Mhm,
most people are used to just spraying and praying or
mhm.
applying in bulk
Right.
and thinking that will work. And
Mhm,
instead, the suggestion overall is that you're going to take a company, and you and I have talked about target companies and how
mhm,
important that is. But
mhm,
you go to target a company and to dig into those very specific things as far
mhm,
as what that looked like when you to the company you left or you're still working, and
mhm.
you're going to contrast that versus the company that you're or the companies that you're targeting.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I think that I want to pick up on that spray and pray piece, right? When you spray and pray, you don't know what you're going to hit.
Right.
And so you might end up at a company that you don't fully know or understand what their work culture is like because you haven't had the time or ability to do research because you have 80 targets you hit with your spray and pray resume application process.
Right.
When you're more intentional about focusing on target companies, it's a more finite set of companies to focus on. That means you can go deeper. You can speak to more people, learn more, and understand more clearly what the actual values and the work culture is before you get in there. So that, my ultimate goal, I don't want my clients to have to do another job search in 6 to 18 months after we work together. uh, you know, yes, of course, it's good for me to make money having a client come back, but I don't want them to come back. My job is for them to not need me anymore.
You're right.
And so that's
Yeah.
the ultimate goal. And so
Yeah,
that's
I
why
agree.
want to put this in place.
I totally agree with that particular approach. And one of the things too, you mentioned that it's very is you're going to have really you could probably if you target 30, 40 companies, you can have the next several companies to work for over a course of 5, 10 years possibly.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, though people tend to hop around a bit more often these days, I still, encourage my clients to end up in a situation that allows them to have some level of longevity there. So whether longevity for you is 3 years, great. I want you to hit that 3-year threshold at your next company rather than start looking for a new job after year one. And so that's why, doing the inventory is helpful. I provide my clients with a work-related values exercise that can actually, identify different values, rank them, and see, okay, these are my top 5, most critical values. And then from there, you can actually generate questions about those values as you do your networking and your interviewing. So, for example, if someone really cares about recognition from superiors. This is an example for one of my current clients.
Mhm.
Her work wasn't being recognized at a top investment bank she'd worked for years, and she was looking to move on. And so the value is recognition from superiors. The question you can generate from that, for example, is how do you celebrate your employees here at company X? And
Mhm.
so it's a very simple, open-ended question, but the answer can be so revealing about what the values are of that company. if they say, oh, well, we don't really do much, maybe a pat on the back here and there, or, oh, we at every company meeting, we shout out, the employees who've done really great work in the preceding 2 or 3 weeks, or we have an employee of the month, which is not just reserved for working retail or fast food. A company could legit have, an employee of the month if they really wanted to, because they had a value of celebrating their people. And so, the response you get back, if you generate values-based questions, will be really great to help you screen those companies as to whether or not there's a good match.
Did you have one or two other, even if it were examples or steps that you've seen effective through your practice?
Yeah, sure. Another thing that it's something I thought of this morning, getting ready to talk to you today. I learned from another coach, and it's something that hit me that often we forget about former employees of a target company. And so what I put together this morning is that you should be doing informational interviews with current and former employees of a target company. And if what they say matches, then you have a pretty good idea that the values and what the culture and the practices the company claims to have are indeed real. And so if there's a disconnect or discrepancy between what the former and the current employee says, then you have a reason to doubt what's going on. Because at the end of the day, the current employee has a vested interest in presenting and upholding a positive image of their current employer. I work here. I'm not going to tell you all the dirt if there is dirt to tell, because I'm still here. But if I no longer work there, I have more freedom and I don't have the same vested interest to, protect or guard things. I can tell the unvarnished truth about what it was like to work somewhere. And so that's another tactic clients seekers can take, speak to current and former employees and compare their feedback about what a company is really like to work for.
And probably the best person as far as a former employee is somebody possibly who have held your position or may have
Yes.
worked directly with someone in the position that you're going to work with, just so that you'll get the experience, not just the data.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a key point there. A lived experience is what you want to try and get from people you do informational interviews with. So you wrote a great article about informational interviews, which you generously allowed me to contribute to. And so in that article, you really stressed the importance for all job seekers to use the tool of an informational interview to do your due diligence before pursuing a company, before adding it to your target list, or if it's on your list, make sure it should stay there and that it belongs there. And so by using the information interview tool, that is your best data gathering technique, because a company's website is their version of reality that they want you to believe, And so one of my favorite movies is The Matrix. I go back to it for so many different, metaphors and analogies. If you want to get the real world, if you want to get unplugged from the Matrix, find out what people who work there now and used to work there really say about this world that the company's constructed on their website, on their press releases, on their leadership statements, because they can all say one thing and be doing something different. So going back to your point about diversity, a huge thing right now is, okay, you say you value diversity, you've said it for years. Show me a picture of your leadership team. Right, that's the tweet that was heard around the world very recently in response to Black Lives Matter and all that's going on right now. And so what I think is going on in many places is that they value diversity at the staff level, but the value diversity at the leadership level, isn't there yet. And so now they're being called to account for that, and people are asking, hey, if you believe in diversity overall, that should be diversity through all levels and all layers of the company, not just at the staff level.
Right. Yeah, I think definitely, the more transparent a company is, the more attractive it's ultimately going to be.
For sure.
Especially for people of color and Black people. They're going a lot more going to look for that now because they spent many years taking the being overlooked, hearing slights and micro insults and microaggressions on a daily basis. And yeah, okay, there's some of us who will want to power through that because they have an end goal in mind, or whatever that end goal may be. The other people want to work in a much more friendly environment to where that they're valued more, and that they don't hear those things, or those things are being addressed and progressively and aggressively. So you know, it helps for companies to be much more transparent.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, and if a company doesn't want to be, okay, but you know, at the same time, you cancel yourself out when you see you're diverse, and you don't promote diversity. And when I say promote diversity, I'm not talking about advertising. I'm talking about people to move their careers on in a way that represents the company as truly in the leadership position in diversity. So
Right.
that's good. You know, I appreciate you coming on to the show. Thank you very much. And
Yeah.
people want to know more about you. How can they get hold of you?
Sure. So, if people want to know more about me or work with me, I'd love to, support you. You can head to avenircareers.com. Once again, that's AVENIRCAREERS, avenircareers.com. I'm also at Avenir Careers on Instagram and on Twitter. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn. As career coach, you got to live on LinkedIn. So just look me up with my full name, Nii Ato Bentsi-Enchill, or you can actually type in Avenir Careers and my picture should pop up in the first, a couple of search results. So Avenir Careers across all platforms, essentially.
Nii Ato, thank you very much for joining us here on the show. And for the rest of you, there'll be more interviews this week. So look for those and look for those, especially on LinkedIn. Those of you are, hit me up if you want to follow me. Of course, my name is Mark Anthony Dyson. You can find me there. Thanks a bunch, and the rest of you have a
Oh,
great.
can I make
And
one
one other
really
thing,
more
yes,
quick
go
point?
ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So just thinking about the pandemic, once again, uh, how a company treats its employees during the pandemic is so
Uh,
telling of what their core values are. So I want to be sure to get this in.
yeah,
And so an important question that job seekers can ask, following, as they're looking for work now, or, as things start to open up once again, is how did this company treat its employees during the pandemic? Was there clear communication? Did the employees feel prioritized? Did the company make its best possible effort to secure their jobs, secure their paychecks, and all of that? Or did they just cast them off to the windows if they were expendable? And so I
mhm.
think that's a really key question, as we go through and hopefully come out of the pandemic soon, is how did companies treat their employees? And also in respect to the social injustice, the racial injustice happening right now, how did companies treat their employees of color, but specifically, how did they treat and support their Black employees during this time? So I just want to share
That
that.
that's a great point, and I think um, though a lot of people will find out that the way you were before a crisis is the way that you are during and even after a crisis, and there are
Potentially.
people who do change,
Hmm. Hmm.
but they're you know, you need to say that we learn these things to bring everything together because the company's not. And you know, and you as a job seeker, if you're not finding that messaging right and consistent, then you have a right to take your eyes and your talent somewhere else.
Right,
uh,
for sure.
and that's part of this time now, is that the tolerance of, you know, being second class citizens is over.
Hmm.
And I think that's a great point, is that the expectations should be much higher for job seekers as well.
Yep,
So
the bar has been raised.
yeah, absolutely. And thank you for adding that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, for
And
sure, no problem.
again, for the rest of you, you got a little bonus. In the meantime, thanks a lot, and we'll see you later on in the week.